this, our concluding video, we're going to look briefly at transactional contexts where social or ethnic ties do not exist, yet network governance is a powerful, very powerful governance force in groups that are large as well as groups that are small, in contexts where the only ties among transactors in the network are the connections formed through past transactions. A leading study documenting the idea that market transactors are willing to rely on the force of network governance was conducted by David Robinson and Toby Stewart. Robinson and Stewart looked at the structure of 38,000 alliance transactions between large pharmaceutical companies and smaller biotech research firms. Defining the network ties among them based only on the interfirm ties created by past transactions, the study found that when either party was more central in the network, that is, was well connected to many others in the network, particularly those who themselves had many connections to other members of the network, the large pharmaceutical company was far less likely to take an equity stake in the biotech firm. The same result obtained when both parties were close to one another in the network. This finding is quite important. It suggests that transactors, consciously or not, regard a firm's network position as an effective substitute for the very expensive governance device of an equity stake. Similarly, John McMillan and Christopher Woodruff's study of contracting practices in Vietnam in the mid-1990s, a time when the legal system provided very little support to commercial transactions, revealed that manufacturers who found their customers through business networks that had no ethnic component, extended 10 to 20 points more trade credit to the people they found through the network than they did to customers who they did not identify through a network. In sum, these and other studies that have explored network governance in other markets, including industrial procurement, reinsurance, other types of business alliances, and textiles, have demonstrated that network governance is a powerful force in contractual relationships, even where the role played by ethnicity is either entirely absent or mostly peripheral. In closing, I want to emphasize that understanding these case studies as examples of network governance, rather than ethnic or small group governance, may have useful implications for development economics. For example, it suggests that those interested in supporting trade in developing or transition economies where the legal infrastructure is weak should focus not on developing private and public dispute resolution tribunals, but also, and perhaps more importantly, on developing ways to strengthen the network basis of trade. Exactly how this can be done has received very little attention, but promising possibilities include creating information intermediaries like credit bureaus, or in some cases, quality determining intermediaries, promulgating standard form contracts which give members of a network a common basis for evaluating observed behavior, and creating physical trading spaces like the Diamond Bourse or the Tsuki Tuna Market in Tokyo that can increase the density of local ties. Now, at this stage, you might question whether this can realistically be done. So I want to tell you about one group that tried to do this and actually succeeded. And that group is drawn from the American lumber industry at the turn of the century. The lumber industry was not at that time marked with high levels of social or ethnic homogeneity like so many industries of the time were. So, lacking these ties and facing rather high rates of contractual breach as trade became less and less localized with the expansion of railroads, 3 industry leaders decided to get together and create a secret fraternal society for lumbermen. And for reasons unknown, some railroad workers as well. The secret society was bizarre. It was known as the Concatenated Order of the Hoo-Hoo. Now, evidence on the hoo-hoo is far scanter than the evidence in the detailed case studies I discussed with you in earlier videos. And given how entirely bizarre this case is, and you will see in a moment that it is truly bizarre, one might question whether it is, at least in part, the commercial equivalent of an urban myth. Nevertheless, relying on historical documents, the trade press, and a handful of interviews with hoo-hoo old-timers in the 1990s, I discovered that the hoo-hoo chose to create local clubs and encourage clique-like ties among its members. It then created an umbrella organization, the Hoo-Hoo International, to bring members of the local club together at relevant intervals. Each local hoo-hoo chapter, under the leadership of their so-called Supreme Snark, established membership rules that took into account commercial integrity, required insider sponsorship, and also required a pledge not to cheat a fellow hoo-hoo. But you couldn't just declare yourself a hoo-hoo. No. All new members underwent strange initiation rituals that were designed to build group solidarity. These included dressing up like Egyptian cats and lapping up milk from dishes on the floor. Local chapters met on a regular basis. Regional meetings were held a few times a year, and once or twice a year, the Hoo-Hoo International sponsored flamboyant social events. These were known as concatenations, and their goal was to bring members and their families together from all across the country. There were special activities for the ladies and for children, and the trade press routinely reported on these parties and the life events of hoo-hoo members, much the way a church or synagogue circular will report on births, deaths, marriages, bar mitzvahs, and notable successes in business and sport of their members. Now, from a contracting point of view, the network of local hoo-hoo chapters that operated under the auspices of the Hoo-Hoo International created a web of social ties among lumber dealers that could easily disseminate reputation-related information across the country. The traders themselves viewed their membership in the Hoo-Hoo as a business asset. They would put the Hoo-Hoo membership signal, a black cat with an arched back, on their advertising, ostensibly to signal their integrity. In short, like the diamond dealers, rubber merchants, and McGreevy merchants, the Hoo-Hoo created a bridge and cluster pattern of ties configured as a small world network that, at least according to the Hoo-Hoo lore, helped to support their contractual relationships, despite their lack of organic ties to one another and their overall geographic dispersion. As we close out this series of videos, still I hope laughing from the Hoo-Hoo example, I want to emphasize that while ethnicity can and does play an important role in supporting change, that I want to emphasize that while ethnicity can and does play important roles in supporting trade, and will often enable transactors to get over collective action problems of various types more easily, and will often make it possible for industry members to impose a wider variety of non-legal sanctions or impose them at a lower marginal cost. The canonical case studies in the private ordering literature are nonetheless better understood as just very colorful examples of network governance, more specifically, network governance in semi-closed bridge and cluster markets. Thank you.